exactly on a recommending mood in this one, but I want to also hear your opinion about this, and I want to know if I'm missing something or not, and I genuinely wish to be proven wrong. Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. So for today we will be talking about the book that I am both deeply interested in but also greatly disappointed in, which is The Accidental Malay by Karina Robles Bahrin. This book asks the fascinating question: what if you find out you're a Malay Muslim after living your whole life as a Chinese woman? Or man, and you're also running a successful pork jerky business. Also, the fact that this is actually a debut and it won the Epigram book prize. I even went to the author's event at LitBooks. I had a blast.
Okay, I just wanted to write a book. I didn't know it was going to get anywhere.
I received my pre-order 2 days before the event and I haven't had the time to read it until now. So the story revolves around the bakwa princess, Jasmine Ling. She is the heiress to the pork jerky company in Malaysia, and after the death of her grandmother, making her the new CEO, she discovered that she is actually half Malay on her mother's side, which makes her Muslim by default. A little bit of social cultural context over here. In Malaysia, at least as far as I know, is that a Malay is Muslim by default, and a Muslim can only marry another Muslim. No mixed religious family, at least for Muslims in Malaysia. So Jasmine's mom, who is a Malay, got pregnant by Jasmine's dad, so her dad converted to Islam to marry Jasmine's mom to legitimize her birth. But her father unfortunately died shortly after the May 30th incident. And since her birth was never registered, her grandmother, with the help of a family friend, registered her under the Leong family as her grandmother's daughter and was raised as a Chinese ever since. This revelation is a massive threat to her claim as CEO, and her relationship with her Malay boyfriend, as well as her company's stability. She has to make her choice, and something has to be sacrificed for her to be able to live her life as who she really is.
I think this country, given its kind of multiculturalism, the diversity that's sitting here, we're really a microcosm of a lot of fiction that's being experienced in other parts of the world in much larger scale. So why are we not using that and leveraging it for creative material? We're really ripe for material. And then that's not even talking about like the clientele of places like Pattaya. That one Crazy Rich Asians also look fake next to that. Do you know what I mean? I mean, really, we're quite OTT, you know. Why we don't do that? It's fine, no?
It's also the reason why I'm fascinated by this book in the first place. This conflict is real, it's tangible in the Malaysian society, and I wish more authors would actually venture into these kinds of topics. While it is a sensitive issue, and I totally understand that, we Malaysians, we're living under an easily butthurt over everything culture. Like, I genuinely think that this is something that needs to be talked about, needs to be discussed in a mature, civilized manner.
I am of mixed parentage myself, like Jasmine, but unlike her, I grew up fully conscious of that fact. My father, who's sitting right here, he's Malay, although actually we found out later he's normally actually Chinese. And then my mom is from the Philippines. So I know what it's like to sort of straddle that, especially as a Malay officially in this country. This is what you'll be known, you're Malay or Muslim. So I'm going to write about that issue, but not from my perspective. So I kind of flipped it around and I used a different device to do it.
The issue of conversion, I've talked about previously in my Shamini Flint and Nur Hafsa Hamid's video, which you guys could check out as well. And it is a real issue that, surprisingly, in this case, Shamini Flint had covered it in a more tasteful way and respectable than both Nur Hafsa Hamid and Karina Robles Bahrin, who both of them are Malay and Muslim by default. Do you sense the irony over here? Shamini Flint covered it in a short, brief, but still respectful way, and Nur Hafsa Hamid doesn't do shit. The Accidental Malay, on the other hand, makes me mad. but not in an Orhab Sahamid way. Might actually be worse though. It's a shame though, because it's actually a pretty good book. I actually wish that I had the time to read this book before the book talk so that I could ask real questions. But alas, I don't have the time, so I went to the event completely blind. I think most of the people who went to the event also went there blind because there's like literally no time to read the book. Before we get into the nitty-gritty, let's get the positive. This book is direct, it's straight to the point, and it's a fast read. I finished it in one sitting. Well, mostly because I was pissed, but I will not deny that it has a very good pacing. While the language is simple, but the writing style is good enough. It's not too flowery that it seems like it's trying too hard, but it's not too simple that it doesn't display any skills. Like, I've spotted some foreshadowing here and there and some really pleasant imagery. Like, for instance, in this one, victory is a fragile thing. It can never long withstand the twin sledgehammers of ambition and envy, its armor crumbling at the first heavy thump of danger at the door. When the enemy is within, the instinct is to flee, and perhaps seek solace close to home, a spot down the road where she can hide for a moment, one eye on the little fires blazing in her own windows. I think it's beautiful, and the characters here also have a lot of colors, like the Kipo aunt, who's after the CEO seat for her son, but still ended up actually being nice, the gay cousin, the foreign grandma, the wise Malay family friend, the on and off boyfriend, and the better potential love interest. Technical wise, I have no issue, and I appreciate that this book centers around female empowerment, but not in a way that woke agenda is doing these days, because they're doing it pretty shittily. So Jasmine has her own personal growth, and the grandma turns out to be a complex character, and it also portrays other form of female oppression.
But when I started writing Jasmine, she came out the way she is now. Like, she's grumpy, she's just grumpy thing. She's a tetchy 40-something, probably pre-menopausal. I don't know what else is going on there.
Well, I think I like that about it, that your protagonist is a 40-something-year-old.
Yeah,
as opposed to...
young people can write by themselves. I'm not young.
and the fact that even in your 40s, you still haven't got it all figured out. Do you know what I mean?
She's a mess.
However, though, the story goes from the accident of Malay to the Malay Dilemma really fast. Like, to be Malay or to not to be Malay. She wanted to keep it a secret, in which for me, as a Muslim myself, if you feel like this is not you and you found out by chance, don't force yourself to be something that you're not. Even in the beginning, she completely embraced her lifestyle and who she is. There is no compulsion in Islam. And if you've been led to believe otherwise, believe me, that is not a representation of Islam at all. The plot thickens as this was leaked to the press. So naturally, this jeopardized her CEO position, which hammers the big, fat, porky irony that the author is trying to make. Like, a halal person is leader of a non-halal company.
The bakwa companies in this country have been around for ages. I mean, these are intergenerational businesses. People know these companies, or whatever. So if she belonged to one of those, I would think, from a heritage perspective, it's that much harder to give it up.
So this leak obviously puts Jasmine in a pickle from all sides. People are eyeing the CEO seat, and her aunt is trying to make her cousin the CEO instead of her before the leak. And this issue just opens up wide, like her uterus, because, flash news, she's also pregnant with her Malay BF's baby, Iskandar, in which at that time they were already exes. And she's dating her childhood friend, Kuan Yu, aka Olivier. And because of this, she is now facing political threats as well, since her situation is quite unique and is actually a precedent for, religious and socio-political sense.
I think I was interested in seeing what happens to a person's your self-definition once the state imposes its own values on you, and midway through your life, not from the time you're a child. You haven't had a chance to get used to it and grow up with that sort of, friction. And then all of a sudden, midlife, there's this huge amount of fiction.
Spoiler alert, by the way, it turns out that her biological mother, Salma, still lives and remarries to a politician in Port Dickson called Burhanuddin, and that he's the one who leaked her parents' marriage cert to the media. Well, we never really get the true narrative from her mother because this is like a limited POV kind of thing. It is highly implied that the revelation is due to monetary reasons, and Burhanuddin, the stepdad, will benefit from this by proxy. It highlights the hypocrisy of some people in the religion because Burhanuddin is a politician who claims to uphold the religion, but he's also very hypocrite about this. Like in this quote, "I told you, we may not be your customers, but we certainly don't mind your money." This was said by one of the Malay friends. Well, I'm not gonna lie, this is a reality to many Muslims. This part could be satire, but the overall feel of this is so she's been getting a lot of front page news that persuaded her to embrace her Muslim identity. All those spearheaded by the holier-than-thou stepdad. So speaking about identity, that's what the whole book is about. Jasmine and her identity.
You have a woman who is expected to carry on the family's legacy, and all of a sudden, her life takes a sharp turn. She has to deal with both the sharp turn and all the fallout of that, plus the pressure that's coming from her extended family to retain her roots. So that's what was there when I was exploring it. But I think if somebody was really put in that situation in this country, that would be the two big forces at play, right? The internal family force and the external societal force.
Unlike other books, it's not about finding identity, it's about defending her identity. She's very sure of her Chineseness, her heritage, her upbringing, and reading that, I personally think it's good for her because we've seen so many books about like, oh, I'm not sure of who I am, it's about discovering who I am. But no, there are several quotes that is foreshadowing her dual identity or identity conflict in here. But the conflict, like I mentioned, it's never internal, it's merely external. "Oh, maaf puan," he addresses her in Malay. She glances at his fair-skinned face, his narrow eyes and thin lips, the slant of his cheeks, the tonal seesaw of his voice. Chinese. She thinks to correct him, but doesn't. They all get it wrong anyway. The Chinese man thinks she's Malay, and the Malays assume she's Chinese, always addressing her in the other's language, so sure they are that she isn't one of their own. The Indians stick to English, probably on account of her expensive handbags, but maybe they're also just a little smarter. She's very sure of who she is, even when she was told otherwise. Like she talks about how she scribbles her name on some places of the house. She's adamant on taking ownership on what she deserves.
The essence of the book is something that's extremely personal to me and has caused me a lot of, pain. Well, pain's a hard word, but I mean, it's been a cause of friction in my life. Because people talk to me in Chinese all the time. I don't understand Chinese. And then when they find out I'm Malay, "Oh, kenapa you like this? That I've had to deal with it all the time.
This is a bit of a true story, but this reminds me a little bit of my brother's grandmother. You see, my brother and I were actually half siblings, different dads. My mother used to tell stories about her ex-husband's family, and that my brother's grandma is actually Chinese. Back in the day, Chinese families preferred boys, so my brother's grandma was given to a Malay family, and she was raised as a Malay. So reading this reminds me of her, even though I never met her. And this story really makes me think what it's like to be her, having all these conflict of identity and dealing with abandonment issues. So reading about Jasmine as a child wanting to leave her mark on everything in her house makes me feel really sympathetic. Like a child shouldn't have to go through that. Plus point for relatability. But I also have to move like 100 points for misrepresentation, or more like lack of representation.
What I think will happen is people are going to have probably polarized views about the book. And that's fine. Because, the book is the thing unto itself, it's not me.
For the accidental Malay, the conflict of the story is good. Like, it's great even. It opens up an area of conversation that needs to be said, but people are too scared to talk about. But if you're misrepresenting something, then I'd rather not be represented at all. So the main players here are Chinese and Malays, and with the myriad of Malay characters here, we have the boyfriend Iskandar, the Malay family friend Tunku Mahmud, Jasmine's biological mom Salma, Salma's husband Burhanuddin, and an old friend April Camilla, and others that were mentioned but weren't really part of the story, like Iskandar's wife and Iskandar's family. So seems a lot, right? I mean, like, there's a lot of Malay characters here, but why do I still feel wronged? Despite their bunch of Malay characters here, in this book, the only Malay Muslim with an open mind and common sense are the ones indulging in alcohol as if like that's the benchmark for advanced mindset for a human being. I get the sense that this book is saying that being a Muslim woman who follows the faith means you're meek, you're weak, you're oppressed by your cheating husband, the stepdad Burhanuddin, who politically and systematically tries to bully Jasmine into becoming a Muslim, to the point where it gets so ugly that she was physically assaulted at an event. The dude has an illicit affair with an actress, and the mom, Salma, is too weak to do anything other than Reda as a person who has been raised with a close to complete Islamic upbringing. I can say with utmost conviction that my faith only encourages me to be strong, open-minded, and live my life with common sense. I tried finding representation of me. My friends, my mother, my family members, some of them, just a common everyday Muslim people who lives my life in God's path as much as I could, but also having fun, excelling in my career, studies, friendship, relationship, passion for traveling, hobbies, YouTubing, because Islam does not prohibit all that. It encourages it. It encourages you to have an interest. It encourages you to be successful. It encourages you to be open-minded, to think for yourself. But what do I get? The most normal Muslim person in this book is Tunku Mahmud, alright, who touts whiskey, preaching open-mindedness, will also mention that his wife, who often has a Quranic class at home, is basically isolating him because he drinks. So basically, you're either an open-minded Malay Muslim who drinks, or a Muslim who is reading the Quran, doing things right, but also very discriminating. Or you can be like a Muslim who also follows God's path, but also very weak and stupid. Iskandar and Jasmine, they have been dating since their university days, but Iskandar got married upon returning to Malaysia, and Jasmine refused to convert. Iskandar keeps having an affair behind his wife's back. The story is trying to justify that affair by saying, the wife is also ultra-religious, but she's also having an affair with someone else. And the child that the wife often miscarried might probably not even be Iskandar's. So far we have a drinker, an oppressed woman, a cheater, and two hypocrites. I just feel wonderfully represented. So freaking wonderful. Well, I understand that this story is about a Chinese girl and the socio-political turmoil she's facing because of some bad apples. There is something overly biased about it that it left a bitter taste when I read it. Even Jasmine's baby daddy, Iskandar, they dated in uni and they broke up because of the reality of the situation. I respect that part of her. Be Muslim only if you want to. Despite being mature and rational enough to ask these important stuff, they're still horny enough to have an affair. At first, everyone will be patient, but it will only take one sidelong glance from an auntie or uncle for things to unravel. When will she stop drinking? Never mind that he does. Will she go to mengaji classes and learn the Quran? Then you need to teach her how to pray. Never mind that he doesn't. And at Ramadan, he will fast because they all do. There will be no question of bacon for breakfast, or bakwa or pork crackling, or going to places like this, or most of her childhood's favorites. An entire lifetime of eating wiped out. Her Chineseness relegated to nostalgic recollections or the remembering of vivid dreams. Another context, alright? Why not ask Iskandar to convert? That is another issue. Like I said, Islam takes itself as a religion very seriously. And as for us, religion is not like some piece of clothing that you can throw away if it runs out of style or you don't feel like wearing it anymore. It is a lifetime commitment, which is why it is utterly controversial thing, especially in Malaysia, if a Muslim chose to convert or be an atheist. As a Muslim myself, I know that it is wrong, But I won't be that person that will be all preachy to whoever it is that is experiencing, because this is between this person and God, and whatever it is, I wish them all the best in life. Speaking of God, by the way, please stop scapegoating God. Please stop using God as an excuse for your stupidity, for your compulsion, your lust, like everything. Just stop.
Hey, stop it!
There's a sense of insult over here after Salma tries to convince Jasmine to convert. Well, I believe that Salma did it out of sincerity, that she genuinely believes it's the right path. But there's something about Jasmine's reaction that feels wrong. She peers into the paperback on her front passenger seat. No note, no letter, nothing except a stack of books, an instruction manual for the Muslim prayer, a Quran in English, a book on the life of Prophet Muhammad, a headscarf, just like the one her mother wore to conceal her hair. She throws the first book out of the car window. She needs no one telling her how to pray. There is a rustling in the leaves. A band of macaques descends on the ground, their beady eyes never leaving the gaze. She watches as they pick up the book, rip out the pages with sharp teeth, and spit them back out. It just feels bitter. And that's not all though. There's irony and sarcasm in the author's tone about Islam, like cynicism. Online there's a liberal pushback. The ones who believe the country is a tolerant place where people should have the right to live as they choose, but these are outliers. Many feel Jasmine should resign. They demand she embrace her true Muslim identity and be done with the mess. After all, it would be just a small sacrifice, wouldn't it? And who wouldn't want to be a Muslim? I get it. Maybe you disagree with a lot of things. I get that. We don't have to agree on the same things all the time. There are some things I do agree on, like the whole hypocrisy thing. When it comes to alcohol, nobody minds. But pork? No. Yeah, these people do exist. Sure, like you might have occasional sex, but eating pork? No. Sure, you might take bribes, but eating pork?
No.
Just a friendly reminder, don't hate the game, hate the player.
No, it's just being Malaysian. All of us go through this, right? We have this love-hate relationship with this country. That's why we're still here. We haven't left yet. We might not ever. Actually, this place is quite funny lah. It still makes me laugh. So I'm still here. So that's why. That's why.
You wanna know what's funny? It felt as if the author just realized that, I felt like I've shit on Muslims too much for a 200 plus page. Might as well include the last minute words of consolation so that I won't seem like a hater. I just need to make sure she doesn't end up trapped like us. I don't want that for her. I also don't want her to be Muslim, unless it's something she chooses to be when she grows up. Me neither, he says. I mean, look at me. I'm hardly a good example myself. If I went Muslim by default, I probably wouldn't be anything. I know this must be difficult for you. It's selfish of me. I know how you people are with your religions. We're hypocrites. It's what we are. It's not the religion. It's us. Look at what we've done to you, Jasmine. To you, and me even. I don't think any of this is what God intended. You mean, after all that narratives about Malay Muslims being misogynistic hypocrites, and all of a sudden, they're not all bad. Yeah, right. By the way, this book was endorsed by names that I know and I love.
I don't care what people think of the book because Tash already gave me an A.
Am I really not getting the satire here? Am I really blind about this? I know that there are social commentary here, but why do I only feel the hate?
I mean, can we ask you whether you do have a kernel of a new novel?
Yes.
Okay.
God help me.
Ada. Oh, best. Ada anything you can tell us?
I don't dare lah.
I know, it's very susah, right?
It might
Because your book
change,
just came
right?
out. Yeah.
No, it's not that. It might change.
Is it still? It's still based in Malaysia? At least?
Of course. But I can tell you that the main character makes me laugh because she's a little bit too much. She really is.
Oh, really? I wonder who you model her.
Nobody. Which is why I'm like, what are you doing in my head, man? So this is the problem with them, right? I know it sounds really weird, but they sit inside lah and disturb you.
Before that, I want to end this video with my favorite quote of this book. She now realizes their folly. Locked doors make people curious, drawing them to the slice of light that slips through the gaps beneath. In a country where so much is unspoken, secrets are selves, especially other people's. You fill the hole in your heart with someone else's shortcoming, so you forget what you're lacking. You soothe your guilt with other people's guilt, so yours look no worse in the reckoning. And the news travels fast in a small city of millions. Someone you know will always know the someone you seek. Hell's dark corners only serve to shine light. I think to conclude, what I learned from this book is that I think I might actually need to start drinking to appear sophisticated. So if you read this book, let me know what you think, because I would love to be mistaken about this. And that thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.
Okay, so because most people, I think here, have not read the book, I'll read straight off from chapter 1. And for those of you who want to be writers, next time don't do what I did, okay? Because my first sentence did not take into account that my parents were going to be sitting here. So close your ears. Chapter 1. So much for torrid sex tonight. At least the bartender is used to her waiting, sometimes for a little while, but other times till closing. Tomorrow, Jasmine Li might make an obscene amount of money, but right now she slams back 5 shots of tequila alone in her favorite bar on Changkat. Iskandar, her lover, is not coming after all. His wife has taken ill with a cold. At 41, she is the ideal mistress, not a wife, never a mother, and gainfully employed, with little need for matrimony to complicate matters. So much for their little celebration. And after months of her haggling with leery merchant bankers, way past the hour the men should have gone home to their spouses. At some point in snatched phone conversations, there was talk of a vacation, just her and Iskandar, to a jazz festival or a safari. He was meant to conjure up some business deal so they could get away for 3 weeks. Except now, he isn't here for even one miserable drink. Thank God she didn't order a bottle. It is 1 a.m. on a Wednesday. There are only a few stragglers left by the time she exits Lucio's. The concrete pavement is slick with leftover rain, steam rising from the asphalt on the road. Her thick wavy locks instantly go frizzy in the humidity. She pulls an elastic band off her wrist and gathers her hair into a messy top knot. It is late. No need to fuss with the hairdo. She isn't beautiful, but attractive. Men have described her as interesting, their blooming desire quelled by a hint of fear, a warning sign that if they get too close, she might possibly render them stupid or scared, their weaknesses revealed on their own. The bartender hails a taxi and Jasmine climbs in, waving a tipsy goodbye. The driver noses the vehicle through the detritus of Ladies' Night Wednesday. They slip down the narrow Jalan Alor with its piers flaming walks and flimsy plastic stools, through the expanse of shiny Sultan Ismail skyscrapers and out into the expressway. Here, and sometimes even overseas, people call Jasmine the bakwa princess. To the city's other socialites, it is cause for slight derision. Being named after sticky pork jerky is hardly the height of glamour, unlike those whose fathers run fleets of private jets or hawk jewels to their rich friends' wives and mistresses. But to Jasmine, it is only a name. After all, the country's capital in 2010 isn't any worse for wear despite its swampy origins. KL, KL, Lumpur, Kuala Lumpur. Nothing people call it reminds them of the mud. Yet it is there, crippling its inhabitants' legs, willing them to stand still if they get too ambitious. Its cold, squelching grip a reminder not to stir the water up top too much. By now, people's noses no longer wrinkle from the stagnant stink. It has seeped into their bodies through the shuffle of their footsteps, muddling their moral compasses, blurring the bright black lines between gods. Thank you.